Love is never rest in your comfort zone and in what's convenient. It is always giving outside of your comfort zone. It is giving of yourself, and it has to be very intentionally focused on what they need, not what you want to give.
Hi, friends. It is time to talk it out, and we are so glad that you are here with us. I'm Ginger Stocky with Aaron Cluley, Joyce Meyer, who all of you know, and is probably the reason that you came here, let's just be honest.
That's why I'm here.
And today we are thrilled to have our wonderful friend, relationship expert, Love McPherson with us.
Always a pleasure to be here.
It is so fun to have you here. Now, you are a certified marriage and family counselor.
Yes.
And so we are talking about relationships today.
That's my space.
This is going to be right up your alley. And we have all been having a reoccurring series on the podcast called What Are You Thinking? I like to say it like that. What are you thinking? But
good.
it's really about renewing our thoughts. So what we want to do today is begin to set that foundation to realize that how we think about people and how we think about our relationships really makes a difference. So if we want to think our way to better relationships, there are some things we all have to learn about it.
Absolutely. I agree. I think that is absolutely the core and the foundation of every relationship. And I'm going to speak as a married woman for 40 years as well, because that's important. Because even in the younger years, I just remember how, when you're married, those first few, before you even get married, you start off with the honeymoon phase, that first 3 to 6 months. And what you get is you get chemical reaction. You get the dopamine, you get the serotonin, you get the oxytocin, and those are chemical reactions in your body to bring you in bond with people. And that lasts for like 3 to 6 months. And then it dies out, and you get to see that person. You be like, oh, okay. What is this? What I'm looking at? And so, and a lot of times what we'll do, we'll blame our mate. We're like, okay, well, you changed. You're not. No. I tell the people, you were on drugs. Okay, you were on drugs, and you are still chasing your first high. If you think you're gonna go back there, and so what we have to do is we have to realize that the first, that's bonding for us to fulfill our call to be fruitful and multiply and, procreate the earth. However, after that, that's the passion. I'm not saying you can't have more passion, but the
take advantage of that 3 to 6 months.
But you know what? The next part is compassion. And so compassion requires a mindset. And a lot of times what happens is because we've had that first high on those drugs in our bodies, right? Those chemical responses, a lot of times we want that feeling again, but in actuality, what we have to do now, we have to work harder to create it. And we have to do it by really adjusting our mind. Now, I'm going to give you a real quick story about Tony and I. When we first got married, and it's so easy to flaw find. You'll be able to see their flaws. And so we didn't have cell phones back then. We had sheets of paper. And I remember I had a spiral notebook. And I wrote down 25 things that I liked about my husband. He doesn't stink. That
goes a long way.
I went all through.
Not
25,
everyone can put that on the list.
Every single day, because they say it ingrains more if you write it. So I would write the same thing in that spiral notebook every single day until I changed my focus. I was reprogramming my mind not to think on those things and to focus on his flaws, because we have negativity bias where we will literally only see the bad and our minds will dump the good.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's good. Yeah, you have to learn to meditate on the things that you like about a person, not the things that you don't like. But I like what you're saying, that you wrote that down day after day after day.
Yeah, until it became
to help
a habit.
renew your mind.
Yeah.
I still like, even though we have computers, I'm doing a study right now in the book of Romans and listening to someone online, and I'm writing out my notes in longhand in a notebook. It helps me get it in me.
It does me too.
Me too.
In preference to just doing it all on a computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It helps me learn.
I remember when I heard you speak, Joyce, about the mind and how it impacts every area of your life. And I didn't understand the full extent when you said every area of your life, because to think that even that affects all my relationships, like even as a mom and as a wife and just an employee, the mind is so powerful in all these aspects of our life. And I don't think we acknowledge that to the extent that's necessary.
And what Love said is true. We do have a negative bias. That's just the old fleshly human nature. That's not the renewed part of us. But if we're thinking with the mind of the flesh, we're always going to think about what's wrong with the place where we work, what's wrong with ourselves, what's wrong with the way we look, what's wrong with your spouse, what's wrong with your house. I mean, everything's going to be what's wrong with everything. But if you think with the renewed mind, the Bible says we have the mind of Christ, then you can purposely, and I want to underline purposely, you can purposely think on the good things. And like when you said your husband doesn't stink, I thought, well, my husband doesn't either, but I've never thought of that. So it's
Add it to your list.
What a blessing.
that's a good thing.
It is a good one. I have said to Mike so many times, when we dated, you used to do this for me. And I never thought about, the drugs that I was apparently on then. And why don't you do that now? So I have dwelled on that in the past. So that's a really good perspective change. That
in addition to that, what happens is a lot of times we tell people, okay, you might be happy single, but you'll be happier married, right? And actually happiness, even, when we're talking about our minds, what it does is the same thing painkillers does. And this is how it happens. You feel this ecstasy of happiness, a burst of happiness. But just like if you stay on a painkiller long enough, your body catches up and that same dose won't kill the pain like it used to.
Yeah.
The happiness after 2 years of marriage, basically you're back to where you were when you're single. But when by that second year, you're thinking, you used to buy me flowers. Why am I feeling this? Why am I disconnected more than I used to be? And so we began to blame our spouse and thinking outwardly that there's something about it. But really you have to look inwardly and say, what am I doing that I'm not doing intentionally? Marriage is all about intentionality. It's not about feeling. Love is never rest in your comfort zone and in what's convenient. It is always giving outside of your comfort zone. It is giving of yourselves. And it has to be very intentionally focused on what they need, not what you want to give.
Yeah.
And so we have to begin to study our mate. We have to learn how their mind even works. We have to understand what traumas they went through and that they're working through their healing place in overcoming. So all of that is affected in your relationships, but our minds have to be renewed where we're not here to take, even though we will receive, but once you give, and that's a sowing, then you should expect to reap.
It all sounds like a lot of work.
It does.
It is a lot of work. But
Let's
there's
just be
a lot
honest.
of benefits to it, especially by the time, I would trade nothing for the work that was done at this age of the game. You understand? Because I dreamed about this day where, we could just relax and we can just enjoy each other. So I long for this day, and it's here, and it's worth every single work.
That's good to know.
You said something I want to camp on for a few minutes because I think it's very important. You said that it's important that we focus on what that person needs and give them what they need. And you see, what we do a lot of times, and I've even seen this in buying gifts or receiving gifts, sometimes people will give me something and I'll think, now, why did you give me that? And it's because they liked it. We have a tendency to give people what we like instead of going that extra mile to find out what they like.
I bought you a pair of shoes like mine. Are you? Yeah, that's the face I thought I would get.
You could probably return them.
No, give them to me. I will take them.
But I like them on you.
Thank you.
Just to build you up. But I have a really good example. My husband's a golfer, and I was out on the golf course with him one day, and he wasn't playing very well. Matter of fact, he was playing pretty bad. And so I put my arm around him, and I kept trying to comfort him. I'd pat him on the back a little bit, and he said, stop doing that. Well, I got so rejected. I felt so rejected. And God just spoke to my heart, and he said, you're giving him what you would need in that situation, but that's not what he needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, because as a man, he didn't want me pampering him and, oh, it's okay, and you'll be all right. He probably wanted me not to notice that he wasn't playing, that he was playing bad.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that's really important for everybody to hear, especially if you're having a problem in your marriage or any relationship.
Yeah.
If you're going to be in a good relationship, you have to give some thought to what does the other person need from me, not just what do I want to give them.
So good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm seeing that played out right now because my husband just lost his stepdad. And so as we're walking through this grief, I want to respond to him with how I would want to be responded to. And I want to say to him the things I would want to hear. And God has shown me, and it's the Holy Spirit, shut your mouth. Because what that man needs right now is nothing for you to say anything, but you need to be quiet and let him speak. So I'm walking out practically what you're saying, and it's hard because I think I know what he needs, and it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a listen to when Joyce was teaching not too long ago and hear what she has to say about how important it is to realize that our thoughts really impact our relationships, and how as we begin to change those thoughts, our relationships will change as well.
Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Isn't Jesus so much fun? For the rest, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is worthy of reverence, whatever is honorable and seemly, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely and lovable, whatever is kind and winsome and gracious, if there's any virtue and excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think on and weigh and take account of these things. Fix your minds on them. So we only get to think pretty thoughts. We don't get to think ugly stuff. How does love behave toward other people? Well, honestly, I believe that all loving action begins in our thoughts about how we're going to see people, how we're going to determine the worth of people. Just because everybody out there is not like me, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. But I spent a lot of my years thinking that. And some of you are probably still stuck there. Well, what's the matter with you? How could you think that? How could you possibly want to wear that? How could you possibly think your hair looks good? See, just because I don't like something, that doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with it. We are not the standard. Come on, this is better than you're acting. We are not the standard for everybody else in the universe. We have rights, and they have rights. 1 Corinthians 13:7 says, love bears up under anything and everything that comes. Now here we go. It is ever ready to believe the best of every person. Love thinks good things about people, and love believes the best. Now, if we can get this love believes the best thing, and see, I think that's the way Dave is, where I started out many, many, many years ago as a judgmental, critical fault finder. Do I have any relatives in here today? Let me add one, a suspicious, critical, fault-finding, judgmental person. I didn't believe the best, I believed the worst. And that was because I'd had a lot of bad things happen to me, and I had seen a lot of some of the worst of people. But just because I had a reason to be that way, I didn't have a right to stay that way. Now, I want to say that again. Just because you have a reason to be negative because of things that have happened in the past, once we know the truth, then we have no right to stay that way, because God is offering us a better life, but it's got to be according to His way of getting there, not our own way. And the more we love people, the more we get ourselves off of our minds, the more we smile, the more we take time to listen to other people that we'd really rather not even mess with, the happier we're going to be.
How many relationships have been ruined by people thinking suspicious thoughts, by expecting the bad thing to happen?
Yeah.
I mean, that is
So
a
true.
nail in the coffin of a relationship.
Right.
You know, a lot of times, first of all, that's one of the reasons why I always talk about, you know, we have to heal and really address the wounded inner child in us. You know, sometimes it's not a child. Sometimes it's a teenager. Sometimes it's the one who's in that past relationship. But we have to, the wounds in our life, because what trauma means, it's a Greek word for inner wounding, emotional wounds. So when we have emotional wounds in our lives, then we need God to heal those emotional wounds so we can operate in love. Because what happens is it distorts, and trauma does, it distorts how we see ourselves first, others, God, and the world. And so when we have a distorted image of who people are and we are afraid and don't trust and things like that, we will keep people at a distance. We'll build walls. We will be suspicious, like you said. And then the comfort is when people want to control how you do things and how they address, control is because they don't have self-control. So because they don't have the skills to control inwardly, they try to control everybody on the outside. So that will regulate them when we're supposed to have the ability to self-regulate through the word. But if you don't have it, you try to regulate everybody else. And so what we do is we can badger our spouses, we can badger our children, we can badger people, even the pastors of the church, to do things our way so we can stay in our comfort zone and we don't get out of control. But that all happens in our minds when we have cognitive distortions. That means what we see is not even truth. It's not reality. We've got to get back in touch with reality, and the reality is in the Word of God.
Yeah, I think about people's preconceived ideas that they come into relationships
Right.
with.
Absolutely.
And because I'm already thinking this way and I assume I know what you're doing, how you're thinking, what you meant by that.
Yes.
And often those things aren't on target at all. It's not at all what's in somebody else's mind.
I had someone say that to me once. I was on the receiving end of that. And they said, I'm so sorry for how I treated you. This is how I thought you were going to be based upon what I had heard about you. So that's why I treated you this way. And I was wrong. I didn't know you at all. And I thought, how often do I do that to other people, thinking that I know them based on what I've heard or seen or small experiences with them? It was very eye-opening to me of how that impacts other people.
Well, I had a lot of experience as I grew up with watching men cheat on women. My dad always cheated on my mother, and then my first husband cheated on me all the time. And so by the time Dave and I got married, I was already suspicious that he would cheat on me. And it was amazing the things that I would see or find and blow them out of proportion and accuse him of something that wasn't even a reality. And he just said, look, if you can't trust me, we're not going to have a very good relationship. And I didn't know how to trust at that point because I had been hurt so much. So it's really important for people to know, when you were talking love, you said something about emotional healing, and the thing that just came to my heart.
Wounds, yes.
Thing that came to my heart is, do you know how many people have no idea that God will even cares about or will deal with that area of their life?
Yes.
How many years did I go to church and the only thing I thought about was going to heaven? That if I had a relationship with God, if I believed in Jesus, I would get to go to heaven. But I had no idea at all that God wanted me to have a good, whole, complete, wonderful life here.
Yeah.
And I had so many wounds in me because of being sexually abused and abandoned to that abuse by my mother and then mistreated by my first husband for 5 years that I needed all kinds of inner healing. And I had no idea that was part of what God wanted to give us.
So how did you begin to adjust your thinking when it came to Dave and having those suspicious thoughts?
Well, when I began studying the Word and realized that, God wanted to heal all of us, not just, Jesus didn't just buy us a ticket to heaven, but he said, I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly. I mean, if you read the Word, it says that he's provided a good life for us, laid out a good path that we might walk in it. So it took me a while to realize that God wanted me to enjoy my life. It took me quite a while to realize that because as a child, I never got to be a child. So I didn't know what it was to just relax and enjoy for no reason other than just the enjoyment. I just wanted our viewers to realize that God wants to heal you everywhere that you hurt. He'll heal your mind, your emotions, your body, your social life, your finances, every area in your life. Jesus didn't just die so you could have your sins forgiven and go to heaven. That may be the most important thing he died for, but he bought you back from the devil. He redeemed you, and it's for a purpose that you might live a good life and enjoy him.
That's so good because exactly what you said, it specifically says that he was wounded for our transgressions, but he was bruised for our iniquities. And if you look at those wounds, that's the stuff you see on the outside. You see cuts or bruises from the outside. Those are the sins that are obvious to people. Oh, yeah, you did this, you did that. But the bruises are for our iniquities, the inner wounds. The bruises you don't see, it's a shedding of blood, but it happens on the inside of you, and the iniquities are the sins of the Father. Those things, those secret things that you hurt about, he paid the price. We can't just skip over and run straight over to by his stripes we are healed. We got to get all of that. The chastisement of our peace, depression, anxiety, all of that. He paid the price, like you said, for every part of us. And we need to tap into the goodness of what he's done for us.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about some specific thoughts that impact relationships negatively and see what you guys think about it, how people can change some of these patterns. One is the way we think about what we expect out of relationships.
Expectations, unrealistic expectations cause more problems in relationships. It's like, well, I expected that you would do that when they didn't even know you had that expectation at all. And a lot of times women think men should read our minds.
It would be really handy.
And men are not
or
like
maybe
that.
bad sometimes.
They're so not like that.
They're not like that. It's like, well, why didn't you tell me that's what you wanted?
Yes.
Well, I don't want to have to tell you. I want you to know that we're different.
But they don't know.
Men and women are wired differently. They don't think about the same things, that we do.
We had this conversation the other night. It's so dumb. I'm kind of embarrassed to say it out loud, but
Share.
I'm going to tell you.
Oh, please tell us.
So we were ordering pizza. That's a serious thing in the Cooley household. So there was this new one, and it's spicy, and I'm the only one in the house who likes it. And so I was looking at it, and I said, oh, okay. And then I give the phone back to Mike. And he said, did you order it? And I said, no. But he heard me say that I really liked the sound of it. Well, he places the order. And I said, did you order me that spicy pizza? And he says, no, you said you didn't want it. And I said, I did say that, but you knew that I wanted it. So you should have ordered it. He was like, but you told me not to. And I said, it doesn't matter. You knew what I wanted.
That's totally perfect.
Isn't that embarrassing?
I get to blame it on you that I have
He was
heartburn.
like, I don't even know what just happened.
I don't even know what happened. He said.
I'm sorry.
That's exactly the kind of stuff that people do and go through. But so often, you move through that so fast, you don't even really realize what happened. So you blame the other person.
Oh, I did.
And you're mad, and they don't get it. I mean, it's just not the way they think.
No.
So how do we change our expectations?
Well, you get realistic.
But how do you do that and not like lower your like you should expect something of people. Like I should expect something of Mike.
Yes,
Something.
but maybe you need to be willing to truthfully vocalize your
Oh,
expectations.
sure. Not just think it in my head.
Yeah, don't say, I'm going to tell you I don't want that pizza, but I really am expecting you to get it.
And you know what? You also need to know yourself enough to know why you expect certain things, because
yeah.
there
Yeah,
is
that's good.
conditioning that happen in our homes as well. I
Right.
remember with Tony, I came from a family of 10, 8 kids, parents, mother, father. But out of that 10, I hated doing dishes. I hated doing dishes because it was just piles of dishes.
Yeah.
And when he came from a family of 4, mother, father, and his sister and himself, he was like, oh, you'll never have to do dishes. Really? Yes, I'll do all the dishes. And let me tell you, so 40 years later, he has kept his word. But who would want that, right? Love McPherson is the one who interfered, okay? This is what ended up happening. Early in our marriage, we didn't have much money going to the dollar store to get our products. My husband would wash dishes, but this is what he would do with the dishwashing liquid. Family of 10, you're like, drip, drip, drip.
Yeah.
And 3 drips? Did you do 3 drips? Why 3? You should.
Why
That
are
would have
there
been clean one
circles?
too, right? And he's just doing it. Then he throws it on the dishes, and I'm like, that's ridiculous. You're going to kill us all with all of this. We're going to die with sluts in our body. I'm just going crazy.
Said poisoning.
And he said, you want to do them? And I was like, no, but you want to do them? No, but you can do
I
them
don't want
better.
to do them, but I want to tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
So finally, God said to me, this was absolutely God who said this to me. He says, love, how much does it cost you? Because he was going through a week. Every week he was going through a whole a bottle of dishwashing liquid.
That
He
is a lot of suds.
Yeah,
It is.
but it was only a dollar store sud. So, and so he says, how much does it cost you for a whole year for him to do dishes? I said, $52 because it's 52 weeks. He says, would you like to trade that and you do dishes? Well, then shut up and let him do his dishes.
Yeah.
Spray, honey, go ahead around because I don't want to get in there and start doing dishes. So,
Yeah.
we can mess things up because we've been conditioned in our mind, use just a few drips, wash it a certain way, and we'll interfere and discourage our mates. And we have unreasonable expectation that they will have the same rules of the home.
Yeah.
See, those are the death by 1,000 paper cuts, right?
Yeah.
Or the Bible talks about this, the foxes, the small foxes.
right.
Those are the things, not even the big infidelity that actually breaks up the marriages. It's the small day-to-day foxes
You're right.
that spoil the vine in marriages. So even little expectations like that, find out if your way is the right way, the only way, or a way.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's the said poisonings that is killing relationships
It
these
is.
days. That's what's
I
happening.
wish my husband was here to hear that because he really always likes me to do things. Well, now, this is how I do that. This is how I do that. I'm like, I don't care how you do that. This is how I do that. And when we talk about dishes, he does the dishes at night, and we don't get ours at the dollar store. And he puts soap in each dish.
Oh. He and Tony are brothers, okay?
And
One other mother.
And then he soaks them and he hand washes them, even though we have a dishwasher. He swears that he can get the dishes cleaner than the dishwasher. Even though the dishwasher water is like, I don't know, extremely hot, the heat. So I'm like, we have to have a dish drainer sitting on our sink all the time. He just got a new one. He's really thrilled with it. So
Good for Dave.
Well, sometimes you just let it happen.
yeah.
Because to this day, we've been married 30 plus years, and Tim still folds his underwear himself because he wants it
yes.
folded a certain
Oh,
way.
yeah, Dave has that about his socks. He's like, I don't do them that way.
So it's like, okay, I'm perfectly fine with that.
I'll be happy
and,
to put
and
them
we
in a
figured
pile.
it out. He's fine with it. I'm fine with it. He gets it the way he wants. And I put mine in a little wadded up ball and throw it in the drawer. Yeah. Okay, here's another thought that with relationships. People think I'm not worthy of this relationship.
That's so good because one of the reasons for people sabotaging, especially during the dating point, is they think it's too good to be true. And so they will literally self-sabotage the relationship because they fear the rejection. And so they'd rather topple it than to wait till it's toppled.
I'll reject you before you reject
There we
me.
go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. And how do we address that? How do we start changing that mindset?
Learn the Word of God. Your mind is renewed according to the Word of God. We have to, the way I like to say it is we have to learn to think the way God thinks, not the way we think as human beings. And that's exactly what Romans 12 is talking about, that we are completely changed by the entire renewal of your mind, the Amplified Bible says. And that takes a lifetime of work. I mean, I've been at it 45 years and I'm still constantly learning that I got myself in trouble because I was thinking the wrong way or looking at something the wrong way.
Yeah. Don't you think too, part of that though is like the statement that you made, I have to even be able to recognize that that's the statement that I'm making, because so many times I am pushing my thoughts towards you. It is your fault when I'm the one having that thought. So I have to even recognize that that's how I'm thinking. That it's like I need to ask
figuring
the Holy
out
Spirit,
the root of
why am I pushing you away?
Yeah.
And I'm the one with the issue. But I don't intuitively know that unless I'm asking the Holy Spirit to renew my mind and He's pointing them out.
Well, you know, a lot of the way that we respond to people is what we're accustomed to. And so sometimes you've got to find a new normal. And I was so accustomed to being disappointed in life and having bad things happen to me that I got to the point where I was afraid to expect anything good because I didn't want to face another disappointment. So the night that Dave proposed to me, I kept wanting to get home. My dad always went out and got drunk on Saturday night, and I wanted to get home before he got home, and I kept saying, I got to go home. And Dave was saying, well, there's something I want to talk to you about. And I thought for sure he was going to break up with me. And I was just thinking, just get it over with and get me home. And instead of that, he was going to ask me to marry him. But it was, I was basing my expectation on what my experience had been in the past. And I think we have to learn, hope. And this was a big thing to me when I learned this. Hope is an expectation of something good. It's expecting something good to happen to you. And so we need to learn how to expect good things. And you say, well, what if I expect something good and something bad happens? Well, you go on from that and you continue to expect good things to happen. You know, it's not going to be perfect all the time, but if we expect bad things to happen, we're sure to get those. And if we expect good things to happen, we will get those.
That's really
That
good.
connects right to what many people think that destroys so many relationships is, what did they mean by that?
Yeah, right.
You know, we can just make up all kinds of scenarios in our head of the simplest phrase that somebody meant absolutely nothing by.
Right.
And it becomes, they're going to leave me, or
that's true.
they don't love me anymore. And wow, we can really think ourselves into a very bad spot.
Right.
I think the hope part that you said was amazing, because that is so necessary. You know, one of the things about hope is, one of the components of hope is that you actually see a way out. You see a door and an opening. And I remember when I was little, my father would take us to the fun house or the carnivals, and they had the fun house. They were in front of me. I would get to this room. I'll never forget the room with all the doors. And it felt like as a child, maybe 30 doors. It's probably not as many. But you go and you don't know which door is the one to get out. And you open one, a skeleton jump out. You open another one, it's something else. It's a brick wall. And pretty soon, I remember just standing in the middle of the room. I wasn't going to open any more doors. It was too stressful. Like, I don't know what's about to happen. And so I'm just going to stand here.
That sounds awful.
It does. It is. And so I remember somebody else found the door, and they were like, come this way. It's this door. But a lot of times, even in relationships, after we open the first one, oh, that's a ghoster. They led me on. This is a cheater. And we open so many doors of our lives and are disappointed that it's not the exit, or it's a brick wall. Man, I was there for 2 years and it didn't go anywhere. And then somebody says, come this way, and God says, come this way. We stop trusting.
Well, Jesus says, I am the door.
I am the door. See? And so when we realize that's the door, that's our hope. We hope and we walk through the door.
You know, I can make a sermon out of that.
That was good.
Absolutely.
What are you going to charge her for that?
I'll call it the fun house.
Absolutely.
Okay, here's one more thing about the way we think. We think, how can they love me better instead of how can I love them better?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one that I think we all realize, but it's still so basic to us.
Oh,
It's I need this, and when we begin to think, what do they need, and giving that to them, then we do find that they're loving us better at the same time.
I don't know that we do realize it. I think that's probably one of our biggest problems is just selfishness.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Plain selfishness. What are you going to do for me? I'm expecting this. I'm expecting that.
Oh, yeah.
We're dying to self is a continual laying down of your life. I mean, Paul said, I die daily. And I don't think that he just meant that he might be killed every day. I mean, he was in a position where that could happen to him. But I think that he also meant that he said no to himself on a regular basis in order to be in the will of God. Because Jesus said, if any man will follow me, let him take up his cross and follow me. But he actually was talking about, if you read that in context, he was talking about living an unselfish life. And I'll tell you, that takes all the focus
Yeah.
and energy that you can have, because everything about our old nature wants its own way.
And you also have to see, when we do have to always address the past, because the past will follow us into the future unless we cut it off.
Right.
And one of the things, if a person has had a history of neglect, sometimes what you'll see is they take on a sense of entitlement because they feel like, you wouldn't give me what was supposed to be given to me, and therefore from now on I'm going to take it, and whatever the cost. You wouldn't give me what I needed in this marriage. That's why I cheated. You wouldn't give me this, and this sense of entitlement and comparison and things like that. You've got to heal that place in you. When the Bible, we're talking about the as I was thinking as a child and reasoning as a child and speaking as a child. And then we put away that child as we mature in Christ, and we put away the childish nature, and that gives us the ability to love. But if you say to a child, child, we keep no record of wrong. No, I'm going to remember. Children will forget bad things, but if it's a wounded child, they will pull back. They will see things and embrace themselves. And so when you're talking about living out the love of 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8, you have to be in a mature place. You have to have a renewed mind to do that. All of those things will not happen without the healed self and the intervention of God in your life for the inner healing needed to love correctly and to receive love.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I thought of one that gets us in trouble with our thoughts. I think I'm right.
Except what if you know you are?
Yeah, well,
That's a
something
good
that
one.
saved Dave and I
That's good.
probably thousands of arguments was just to simply say, well, I think I'm right, but I could be wrong. Just to let that thought in.
Yeah.
It's amazing how we fight to be right.
Absolutely.
And I think that comes from not feeling right about yourself. You feel like there's things wrong with you, so you feel like you have to prove that you're right in all of these situations.
For me, it's just plain old pride. I just think
Well,
I'm
I mean,
right.
That's
you
what
know?
it is in everybody.
Yeah.
It's like pride. And
It took me a long time to learn that lesson that you're saying. Is I'm going to say this because I think it's right, but I might be wrong. I want to be open to the possibility that I could possibly be wrong, maybe a 1% chance.
Well, one of the things that feeds this is people with our personality, the stronger-willed, more leadership-geared personality. The thing is you usually are right. But there are those times when you're wrong. And when I say you usually are right, it's just part of what God builds into you because of the position that you're going to have.
And the gifts that he gives.
And the gifts that he gives you. But it can definitely cross over a line to where it becomes prideful.
Yeah.
And you just won't even consider. A person who won't even consider that they might be wrong is a person that you are going to have a very hard time having a good relationship with, because nobody is right all the time. And our son David, who works here and has made a great transition over the years and does a great job. He's got our kind of personality on steroids. And he finally said, I finally learned that being right is highly overrated. And I thought that was good. We fight so much to be right.
Yeah.
But God taught me, he said, you know what? If you need to be proven to be in the right, I'll take care of that. You don't have to try to prove to somebody you're right. What difference does it make if they think you're wrong?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll hear myself, I wouldn't call it arguing, but just having a different opinion from somebody. Typically with Mike, probably because I'm most comfortable with him. But if we're differing in opinion, I can hear myself continue to push, even when at some point I think I don't even believe it myself anymore. I'm going to keep going because I'm not going to tell him that, actually, I think you might be right in this one. And
It's a matter of principle,
Yeah, and my argument is really good. But I need to let go of some pride in that and say, actually, I think this one, you are right. So I identified that one quite a bit.
That's really good.
Yeah. This is a little bit different, but talking about a quote like you were just talking about with David, something that Tim said not long ago is he said, I can't allow my emotions to be controlled by things that are out of my control. And I thought, wow, that's
good.
really deep. And he was talking about sports.
Of course.
He was talking about not getting so upset when the game's not going on television the way that he wants it to. He's
You are freeing some people right now. Okay?
But what he said was incredibly intuitive, that there are so many things in life that are out of our control. We want to be right, but sometimes we're not. We want our relationships to go well, but sometimes they're not exactly perfect. And so we can't let those emotions run the way that we respond to each other because some of it's just out of our control. Yeah. Sometimes that team you love is just not going to win.
It's sad, but it'll be okay. Love and I were talking earlier before we started recording about kids and like my relationship with my kids as a mom and the things that I'm teaching them and they're seeing me respond in and how I communicate is going to affect them. And I thought it was so interesting what you said, so many really good things, but one of them was things I see in Caden, for example, my oldest, that are like me. How do I take the good parts? I mean, you really should say it because you did it so well, but I thought your explanation of how I will impact him and create confidence and humility and affect the way he thinks is really important.
I think what we were talking about is how, I was saying, Aaron, and it was surprising to hear the people kind of before we started the broadcast kind of saying a little bit of that. I said, I think that when people see you and you look like you have it all, like you're beautiful, you're thin, you have a husband, you're working with Joyce Meyer, you have beautiful children, everything like that. In order to be accepted, you'll pull back a little bit and maybe not know everything. Which I think but to make everybody else feel good, you'll pull back a little bit. Because you said your son was asking questions that he knew the answers to. And I said, you don't know what he might have happened to him in school, where just to make everybody feel comfortable, he decided to adopt your way of making everybody feel comfortable, which is just kind of pull back a little bit and not operate in everything. And you need to teach him the difference between people pleasing, kind of pacifying people's egos, and humility, true humility. But there's some things that he needs to operate for his giftedness for the future that he needs to take authority on and be able to say what he needs to say about what he knows and what God has imparted to him. But if he trains himself to mute himself in order to people please, then his ministry will only go so far.
Right. I think that's so good because what that says to me is not only how to teach him, but I need to think about how I'm thinking about myself because my thoughts are impacting how my kid is thinking about himself. And I don't necessarily realize the extent, like how far beyond myself do my thoughts affect? and the way that I treat myself or other people. That's not just me, it's affecting in those closest. It's like generational it could go into. And that's bigger than I think I've given it credit to.
A lot of wisdom inside that just needs, that people are waiting, pull on.
Sure.
As parents, we're always wondering what our kids are going to be talking about in counseling years down the road that we did to them.
I'd like to limit it as much as possible.
Have a counseling fund, like a college fund.
One thing is for sure, there's probably not anything that's more important in relationships than our thoughts. Mm-hmm. And so I would like to say, think about what you're thinking about. Mm-hmm. Because so often our thoughts go through our minds so fast, and we don't even realize that wrong thinking is what's causing the problem. We think you're causing the problem, this is causing the problem, that's causing the problem, not having enough money is causing the problem, when really, it's really all the way that we see it. And you can change your perspective by just changing the lens a little bit on how you're looking at it. And when God first started teaching me about thoughts, before I ever wrote the book, Battlefield of the Mind, he taught me, think about what you're thinking about. And so if you start to feel depressed, think about what you're thinking about. If you had a bad day, lay in bed at night and think, now, what were my thoughts mainly focused on today? And it won't take very long. Like, even sometimes when I respond a certain way that seems, it's like, I'll ask God, now, why did I respond that way? I don't want to just let it go and say, well, we all have weaknesses. I want to know, why did I respond that way? And a lot of times it's because of thinking based on old things that happened to me that I need to let go of what lies behind and press on to the good things that are ahead. So I just want to encourage everybody in these last few minutes that we have that your thoughts are so important, how you think about yourself, how you think about other people, how you give people a break. Give them room to have a couple of weaknesses. Give yourself room to have a couple of weaknesses. I remember when God said to me one time, I give you permission to have some weaknesses. And I thought, well, that can't be God. He wants us to be perfect and strong all the time. But we do have weaknesses, and God understands them. He's not mad at us all the time because we have weaknesses. I was talking yesterday in some teaching that I was doing about when Jesus washed his disciples' feet, and he said to them, you're all clean except one of you. And he was talking about Judas, and I thought, well, how could he say you're all clean when Peter was getting ready to deny him? But what he saw their weaknesses, but he knew they weren't wicked. Wow. And there's a difference.
Wow, yeah.
I'm not a wicked person. I desire to do everything right. I love God with all my heart, but I do have weaknesses.
Yeah.
And a few mornings ago, I was still just waking up, and I heard the Lord say to me, Joyce, do you love me? And I said, yes. And then he said it again, Joyce, do you love me? And I said, yes. And then I heard him say the most precious thing, that's all I require.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
That's all I require.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what a perfect way to end this discussion. Thank you all so much.
God,
Love,
that was
it's been so
good.
fun having you here.
She left me at the you might have flaws, but he was not wicked. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my God, if we could all look at our relationships like that.
Yeah.
That was so good.
That's what grace is all about, isn't it? I'm so grateful that God has that kind of love for us.
And we want our viewers today to relax and not have to feel like you're on this treadmill of trying to be perfect all the time. Just love God. That's what he wants. He wants to love you, and he wants you to love him. And the more you love God, the more your character will change.
Yeah.
And that's how you'll become more and more like him.
So here's a scripture to end on as we figure out how to walk this out, changing the way we think about our relationships. James 1, verses 19 through 20. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. God knows your heart. And so that's exactly what Joyce was talking about. Just slow down and give yourself a break. Be slow to speak sometimes and listen a little bit more. And I think you'll see some big changes in your relationships. But thank you all again. It's been so fun. We look forward to the next time that we all talk it out together. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.